In the dim glow of a bustling city street, where the neon lights flickered like distant stars against the relentless downpour of rain, a young woman huddled under a tattered umbrella, her clothes soaked through and clinging to her frail frame. Her eyes, wide with desperation and hollow from nights without sleep, scanned the faces of passers-by who hurried past, oblivious to her silent plea. Then, she spotted him, a man in a tailored suit, stepping out from a lavish restaurant, his plate of half-eaten steak and vegetables still steaming in the takeout box he carried. With trembling hands, she approached, her voice barely a whisper lost in the storm. "May I have your leftovers, sir?" But as he turned, the gazes locked, and in that instant, something shattered within him, a floodgate of memories long buried, rushing forth like a tidal wave, for in her eyes, he saw the ghost of a life he had lost forever. If this opening has already tugged at your heartstrings, and if you believe in the power of kindness and second chances, please hit that like button, drop a comment below sharing your own story of unexpected compassion, share this video with someone who needs a reminder of humanity's goodness, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks for more tales that inspire the soul. The city was New York, a sprawling metropolis where dreams soared high for some and crumbled into dust for others. Elena had known both sides, though the latter had claimed her far too early. At 25, she carried the weight of a lifetime on her slender shoulders, her once vibrant spirit dulled by the ceaseless grind of survival. Born in a small apartment in Brooklyn to immigrant parents who had fled poverty in Eastern Europe, Elena's childhood was a tapestry of love woven from scraps, her mother sewing dresses late into the night, her father working double shifts at a factory, all to give her a shot at the American dream. But dreams, she learned, were fragile things. When she was 12, a fire ravaged their building, sparked by faulty wiring in the old tenement. Her parents perished in the blaze, trapped while trying to save neighbors, leaving Elena orphaned and adrift in a system that chewed up the vulnerable and spat them out. Foster homes came and went, each one a temporary cage of indifference or worse, until she aged out at 18, thrust into the cold streets with nothing but a backpack and a faded photograph of her family. From there, the descent was swift and unforgiving. Jobs were scarce for someone without connections or a high school diploma. Elena had dropped out to work odd gigs, scraping by on tips from waitressing or cleaning. But the pandemic hit like a hammer, shuttering restaurants and leaving her unemployed, her savings evaporating like morning mist. Eviction followed, then nights in shelters where safety was a luxury, and eventually, the streets themselves became her home. She learned the art of invisibility, blending into the shadows of alleyways, begging only when hunger clawed too fiercely at her insides. Pride was the first casualty. She had once dreamed of becoming a teacher, inspired by her mother's tales of resilience, but now, each day was a battle against the elements, against the judgmental stares, against the gnawing fear that this was all there would ever be. Rainy nights like this one amplified the misery, the water seeping into her worn sneakers, the chill burrowing into her bones, reminding her of how far she had fallen. Yet, in her eyes, a spark remained, a quiet defiance born from the love her parents had instilled, whispering that hope could flicker even in the darkest storm. Across the chasm of fortune stood Marcus Hale, a name synonymous with success in the glittering world of finance. At 58, he was the epitome of the self-made man, rising from humble beginnings in a Midwest town to helm a billion-dollar investment firm that shaped economies. His penthouse overlooked Central Park, his garage housed vintage cars that gleamed like trophies, and his schedule was a whirlwind of board meetings and galas. But beneath the veneer of power lay a void, a hollow chamber where joy had once resided. 20 years ago, Marcus had everything: a loving wife, Amelia, whose laughter filled their home, and a daughter, Sophia, just 5 years old, with eyes like polished emeralds and a curiosity that lit up the world. A family vacation to the coast turned tragic when a drunk driver slammed into their car on a foggy highway. Amelia died instantly, Sophia succumbed to her injuries days later in the hospital, and Marcus, the sole survivor, was left with scars that ran deeper than skin. Grief consumed him. He buried himself in work, amassing wealth as if it could fill the emptiness, but it only amplified his isolation. Friends drifted away, relationships fizzled, and nights were spent alone with ghosts, staring at old photos, wondering if life held any miracles beyond the stock market's rise and fall. That fateful evening, Marcus had dined alone at Le Chateau, a five-star haven for the elite, ordering his usual steak medium rare, though his appetite had waned midway through. The restaurant's opulent chandeliers and velvet drapes felt mocking in his solitude, a stark contrast to the family meals he once cherished. As he stepped out into the rain, takeout in hand, intended for his housekeeper, though he knew he'd likely toss it, the young woman's approach caught him off guard. Her words, soft yet piercing, hung in the air like a plea from another era. He paused, umbrella shielding him from the deluge, and looked down at her. She was drenched, her hair matted, her face pale under the street lamp's harsh light, but her eyes, those eyes, held him captive. They were a mirror to Sophia's, the same shade of green flecked with gold, the same depth that seemed to hold untold stories. Time slowed, the rain's patter faded, and in that gaze, Marcus felt a jolt, as if lightning had struck his soul. Was it possible? No, it couldn't be. Sophia was gone, buried in a quiet cemetery upstate. Yet, something inexplicable stirred, a whisper of fate urging him not to turn away. Elena expected rejection, a curt nod or worse, the averted eyes that stung more than any insult. She had grown accustomed to it, steeling her heart against the world's apathy. But this man didn't move. He stared, his expression shifting from surprise to something raw, vulnerable. He handed her the box without a word, but then, astonishingly, invited her inside the restaurant's awning, out of the rain. Confusion washed over her. Kindness from strangers was rare, often laced with ulterior motives. Yet, there was no malice in his demeanor, only a quiet intensity as he studied her face. Marcus, his mind racing, asked her name, and when she whispered, Elena, a shiver ran down his spine. It was Amelia's middle name, a detail he had never shared publicly. Coincidence, or something more? He offered her a warm meal inside, insisting when she hesitated, and as they sat in a secluded booth, the story began to unravel, thread by fragile thread. Over steaming coffee and fresh bread, luxuries Elena hadn't tasted in months, Marcus listened as she poured out her tale, not in floods but in measured drops, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She spoke of the fire, the loss that mirrored his own, the endless cycle of hardship that had eroded her dreams. Marcus felt an ache in his chest, a resonance that went beyond sympathy. Her features, now that he looked closely, bore an uncanny resemblance to Amelia, the same high cheekbones. The gentle curve of her smile when she thanked him. Suspense built in his thoughts. Could there be a connection? He probed gently, asking about her parents' origins, and Elena shared what she knew. Her mother from a small village in Romania, her father from nearby, both arriving in America in the late 90s. Marcus's heart pounded. Amelia had Romanian roots, her family scattered after emigration. A wild thought formed: what if Elena was a relative, a niece or cousin lost in the diaspora? Or stranger still, could fate have woven the paths together for redemption? As the night deepened, Marcus made a decision that would alter everything. He offered her a ride to a nearby shelter, but en route, he detoured to his office, where a private investigator on retainer could dig into her background. Elena, wary but exhausted, agreed, sensing in him a sincerity that pierced her defenses. Days turned into weeks as the investigation unfolded, suspense mounting with each revelation. Records showed Elena's birth in a hospital not far from where Marcus and Amelia had lived. Her parents' immigration papers listed distant ties to Amelia's lineage. But the miracle crystallized when DNA tests, arranged discreetly, confirmed it. Elena was Amelia's niece, the daughter of her estranged sister who had cut ties years before the accident. The sister had passed away in the fire, but Elena survived, unknown to Marcus until now. The eyes that had haunted him were family, a living link to the love he thought extinguished. This discovery shattered Marcus's isolation like glass underfoot. He welcomed Elena into his world, not with pity but with genuine affection, offering her a guest room in his penthouse, resources to resume her education, and a job at his firm to rebuild her confidence. Elena, overwhelmed, grappled with the change. Trust didn't come easily after years of betrayal by fate. She struggled with imposter syndrome, fearing she didn't belong in this polished realm, nights plagued by doubts that whispered she was just a charity case. But Marcus's patience, born from his own grief, bridged the gap. He shared stories of Amelia and Sophia, showing her photos, and in those moments, Elena felt a warmth she hadn't known since childhood, a sense of belonging that mended her fractured spirit. Together, they visited the gravesite, laying flowers and sharing tears, turning sorrow into shared healing. As months passed, the transformation deepened. Elena enrolled in community college, pursuing teaching with renewed vigor, her eyes regaining their spark. Marcus, inspired by her resilience, founded a foundation in Amelia and Sophia's names, aiding the homeless and orphaned, channeling his wealth into second chances. Their bond grew, not as benefactor and recipient, but as family rediscovered, late-night talks over tea, walks in the park where laughter echoed once more. Challenges lingered. Elena faced setbacks, like anxiety from her past triggering panic in crowded places, and Marcus battled guilt for not seeking family sooner. But these hurdles only strengthened their resolve, building a narrative of redemption that felt cinematic in its scope, each scene unfolding with emotional layers peeled back slowly, revealing hearts mended by unexpected grace. The city that had once seemed so cruel now pulsed with possibility. Elena volunteered at shelters, sharing her story to inspire others, her voice carrying the weight of experience. Marcus, no longer the reclusive tycoon, found joy in simple acts, cooking meals together, celebrating small victories. One evening, under the same rainy sky that had united them, they stood on his balcony, overlooking the twinkling lights. Elena turned to him, gratitude shining in her eyes, and in that gaze, Marcus saw not just family, but a miracle incarnate, a reminder that life, in its infinite mystery, could weave threads of loss into tapestries of hope. The journey wasn't without scars, but those scars told a story of survival, of kindness bridging divides, leaving them both forever changed. As this tale draws to a close, if the miracle of Elena and Marcus has touched your heart, stirring emotions you didn't expect, please show your support by liking this video, commenting your thoughts, sharing it far and wide, and subscribing to Kindness Speaks, because every act of engagement helps spread these stories of humanity's brightest lights. Before we end, I'd love for you to comment below with the line, "Kindness is the miracle we all need." Let's fill the comments with that powerful reminder.